Hey everybody, it's Chris Francis, and in today's video we're going to try to answer the question that has been burning in my mind for months and months and months. Should I sell my Canon C200 and upgrade to the Canon C500 Mark II? I'm really hoping the answer to this is yes, but I have been a Canon Cinema EOS, what am I talking about? EOS owner. First of all, why did they name it EOS? That's just so hard to say and it's silly. Anyways, I've been a Canon Cinema owner since the very first C100, and after that I upgraded to the C100 Mark II. After that I actually upgraded to the original Canon C500, and then 2 years ago I actually bought the Canon C200, which is recording this video right now, along with the C200B. And while I've also used the C300 and the C300 Mark II a handful of times over the past couple of years, in this video I'm really going to be focusing on comparing the C200 to the C500 Mark II and run some key tests that will help determine whether I actually upgrade to this camera right here. So let's dive in and see what happens. Alright, in part one of my tests, I'm going to be focusing on image quality between the C200 and the C500 Mark II. And even though there's a lot of new features that drew me to the C500 Mark II, at the end of the day, if I'm going to buy a camera that costs $10,000 more than my current one, I want there to be an improvement in image quality, and with the new 6K full frame sensor, I'm really hopeful that there will be. Now in this first test, I did a side-by-side comparison of the two cameras and each camera's main two recording modes. Now of course there are more than just those modes on these cameras, but these are the only ones that I care about, so I've limited the test to these. C200 4K RAW, C200 UHD XF AVC, C500 6K full frame RAW, C500 4K full frame XF AVC. Now the reason I'm only testing the full frame modes on the C500 Mark II is because those are the only modes that will utilize the entire 5.9K sensor. So if you're shooting in Super 35 mode on the C500, it's actually going to be cropping into the sensor to create a 1:1 4K image, which is pretty much exactly what the C200 is doing. One last note before reviewing the footage in the first set of images. You're going to notice that the lenses and the apertures are a little different between the two cameras, and that was done intentionally to most closely approximate the same field of view and the same depth of field, so that way both cameras were on the same playing field as far as sharpness goes. And you'll see that I didn't nail this perfectly, but it's close enough for our purposes here. Also in post, I've added exposure compensation so that the images look the same and won't distract from what we're really looking for in these tests, and that's differences between perceived sharpness, clarity, and color rendition. Now all the following images that you're about to see are utilizing Canon's WideDR LUT, which is my preferred look for almost all of my projects. Also, everything here is in a 23:9:8 UHD timeline. So first here we have the C200 RAW versus the C200 XF AVC. You can tell right away that the RAW has a warmer and more saturated look, where the AVC is duller and has a more blue magenta look to it. And if you look closely at the areas like the clothing, you can see that the RAW is resolving more detail as well. Now as far as dynamic range in this shot, they're looking about the same. Here we have the C200 RAW versus the C500 Mark II AVC. Immediately you can tell that these images look more similar right out of the gate. The C500 AVC is still trending a little towards the blue magenta side of things, but not nearly as much as the C200 AVC was doing. And if you look closely at the clothing, you can see that the C500 AVC is actually resolving a little bit more detail than the C200 RAW. And I was hoping this would be the case, and I'm glad that it is. Overall, I'm still liking the color of the C200 RAW better, but the C500 AVC seems to have better detail here thanks to downsampling from 6K to 4K in camera. And now we have the C200 RAW versus the C500 Mark II RAW. Like the C500 AVC, the C500 RAW is resolving detail better than the C200, as you can see in the clothing texture and a little bit in the hair. Also, the C500 color is now matching the C200 color almost exactly. It's a little warmer and a little greener than what the C500 AVC was giving us. Now, some people are making a huge deal out of the C500 Mark II recording in 5.9K RAW, but as you can see in these two side-by-side clips, you're more than doubling the file size of the C200 RAW file, and you're only getting like maybe a 5% quality increase here. Now, just for fun, we'll compare both cameras' AVC codecs. The C200 is less saturated and is a little soft and mushy in some of the clothing and hair textures, but overall not too bad. I'll be curious to see how noticeable this is once it hits YouTube's compression. Now I'm going to run through these same videos again, only this time I'm going to do a light color correction on the AVC clips, and I'm also going to give the C200 clips a 10 to 15% bump in sharpness to see how closely I can get all of these clips to match. Now on these next clips I put both cameras at the exact same settings, so the depth of field will be different, and as a result the sharpness may change a tad. So on these next clips we're not going to focus on sharpness, we're going to focus on dynamic range and color to see if there's any difference. Once we put the wide DR LUT onto both clips, to my eye there's an ever so slight difference in color, and the dynamic range to me looks exactly the same. As you can see in the luma values on the waveform monitor here, it's basically the exact same, and from my tests I'm pretty confident that any variation we're seeing here is from not being in a 100% controlled environment. So while the color and dynamic range of both cameras seem to be the same, the C500 RAW does seem to be a cleaner image. Now, when we magnify these images by 2, the C200 from 100% to 200%, and the C500 from 69% to 138%, we see what appears to be noticeably less noise in the C500 clip. However, if we punch in on both clips to full 200%, we see that each image roughly has the same amount of noise. In this shot, the noise and the shadows on the C200 seems to be more green, where the C500 looks to be more red. To me, it seems that the 6K full frame sensor is just as noisy as the C200's 4K sensor, but the true advantage in image quality here comes from being able to downscale the 6K image by 31% to 4K, which in turn shrinks the noise by 31% as well, which makes it harder to see the noise and therefore makes the image look cleaner on a 4K timeline. Now, I wasn't able to put this camera in every situation that I would have wanted, and hopefully somebody else out there can do a low light ISO test, because I would love to see the results of that and see if there's any major differences. But after running the tests that I did and then shooting a 2-day documentary shoot with this camera, the best that I can tell is that the image quality advantage of the C500 comes from 2 places. And the first is having a 6K image downscaled to 4K, which shrinks the size of the noise and also creates sharper, more detailed footage. And the second place is from the improved internal codec, which when shooting in AVC, going from the 420 8-bit 150 megabytes per second compression on the C200 to the 422 10-bit 410 megabytes compression on the C500 Mark II, makes a pretty significant difference. Now, I do want to mention one important caveat that I think is getting overlooked when it comes to the image quality of the C500, and that's if you want to get better image quality on the C500 than what you're getting on the C200, you have to do it in full frame mode, because that is the only mode that will record from the full 6K sensor. And I want to mention this because there's this perception out there, especially on YouTube, that full frame footage is better than Super 35 footage, and that's simply not true. What shooting full frame will actually do for you is it actually makes your lenses wider, and it also gives you the ability to make your depth of field even shallower if you want. But neither of these are actually going to improve the quality of your image. It will just make your image look different. So from a technical standpoint, the only real reason that shooting full frame on the C500 Mark II will give you improved image quality over the C200 is that it's because it's shooting 6K source material, not because there's some full frame magic going on. Alright, I hope this video was helpful in showing you the image quality differences between the C200 and the C500 Mark II. And in my next video, I'm going to do a deep dive into the new in-body image stabilization feature and show you where it really shines and also where it actually makes your footage a little bit worse. And if this content has been helpful to you, I'd really appreciate a thumbs up and a subscribe. So thanks for watching.